I was a beard throughout high school, and I'm still furious about it. I wish to share a story that continues to anger me. I realize I may come across as overly naive, but I feel compelled to express this. When I, 32 female, was 15, I met a boy who was 14 at a school event, and we connected immediately. It was truly the first time I felt entirely comfortable and open around a boy. We shared similar geeky interests, he was very intelligent, and he was enthusiastic about volunteering in the community, which I appreciated. He lived halfway across the world, and we exchanged emails. This was in 2008. We started corresponding frequently. I recognized I had developed a crush, but instead of letting it fade away since he was so far away, I nurtured it because I was a fairy tale loving girl who envisioned a romantic story. Without a smartphone, I would rush to the computer after school to check my emails. Whenever something occurred in my life, I would think about sharing it with him until I sat down to compose the email. Our letters were very lengthy, and we exchanged details about our lives, both hinting at romantic feelings in hindsight. At one point, I gathered the courage to tell him I loved him. Here are parts of his precise reply. The only reason I have not already told you that I love you is that I wish to express it to you in person. I believe I understand why so many stories talk about love at first sight. If it isn't possible, why do they exist? You are truly the most amazing person I have ever met. I have never encountered anyone in my entire life who has made me feel the way you do. From there, we spent about 2 years exchanging increasingly extravagant and over-the-top romantic declarations. For instance, he wrote to me, "Our love is distinct from that of Cinderella and her prince, or of Juliet and Romeo, because it is not a mere fantasy. It is love that knows no limits, filled with understanding, trust, and honesty. We embrace each other for who we are, flaws included. I love you." I abandoned the idea of learning to drive because I decided to save money to visit him, which he was aware of. In my country, driving lessons are a financial expense, and one cannot learn from parents. In hindsight, I can also say that there were other boys I was interested in, but I never allowed myself to entertain those thoughts because I believed I had found my soulmate and the ideal love story. We had some conversations over Facebook Messenger and a few Skype calls, but not many. Somehow he was always unable to. Eventually, when I turned 18 and he was 17, he managed to visit my country again with a group. It felt like the most thrilling thing ever. I had been dreaming about it for what felt like my entire life. I informed him that I was quitting my babysitting job to be available. He could not travel alone and lacked a phone, so we agreed he would contact me whenever he could and let me know where and when he would be, and I would come. I took a 3-hour trip using public transportation to the airport, waiting for hours. When his flight landed, I rushed to him, but he brushed me aside and said he needed to go with the group. I was shocked and cried for hours in the airport, but eventually concluded he must have been suffering from jet lag. During the following days, I waited by the phone incessantly to hear from him, declining other social events. Finally, I managed to reach him, and he informed me he would have free time on a specific tourist street at 8. He then had to disconnect. I assumed he meant 8 a.m. My mother drove me there. It was also a 3-hour drive, and we spent hours navigating the city searching for his group. Eventually, I found them, but it turned out he meant 8 p.m. and did not specify. I spent the day with his group, but he told me he could not even hold hands or hug because of the group's rules. A few more days passed with me waiting, and again I managed to reach out to him, and he told me he would be at a house party very close to where I lived. I arrived there, and after a while I asked him to walk with me outside. I took a step forward, he took a step back, and again, and again. My foolish mind still did not comprehend something was amiss. My entire identity was built on this fantasy, so I could not grasp the reality. Eventually, he confided that he thought he was gay. Since when? If it's something recent, I can understand, we can discuss it. But since always, even before we met, it was easier for him to tell his parents that he had a girlfriend across the ocean. He stated he genuinely cared about me and was sorry for hurting me. We spoke briefly, and I departed, tearful. I felt completely numb. I recovered from him fairly quickly. I think I was in love only with the fantasy at that point, but it was challenging to find myself without knowing what to do or what narrative to construct about my life. Deep down, I always recognized that this could end poorly, but I assumed if it did, the fantasy would be shattered for both of us. I did not realize I was alone in laying my heart bare. I never imagined I was being made a fool of. A couple of months later, I calmed down and reached out. He expressed he would be glad to remain in touch as friends, and I thought, I can't judge him, I do not know what it is like to be gay and how difficult he may have found it to come out. I wrote to him about my feelings, that I could forgive him, and shared that I was in a very dark mental space. I started college, and it was a significant social struggle, especially since I did not know how to approach boys at all and had serious trust issues. I felt like I had been thrown into the ocean without knowing how to swim because I spent the time I should have used to learn clinging to a fantasy. I was sinking into depression. Well, he did not respond to this email. I was quite hurt, and a few months later, I told him that I could not forgive him this time, as he claimed to care about me as a friend, and if he truly did, he should have replied to an email like that. He provided some half-hearted excuse. I forgave him again. He never inquired about my well-being but sent me chapters of a novel he was writing for my input. We also discussed his coming out, which he finally found the courage to do. Ultimately, I came to understand that I was merely something for him to exploit, and this time, I removed him from all my social platforms and told him he was a dreadful person. I informed him that he only pretended to care about the community because volunteering would enhance his college application. Years later, when I watched Frozen, I thought he was just like Prince Hans. He identified this girl eager to fall in love and exploited that for his own benefit. I learned to drive years later because, after not having done so in high school, it was quite a challenge to find both the money and time. In this regard, it significantly impacted my life, as living in a place where not driving made existence very difficult. To this day, I struggle to trust people who are highly socially engaged. I always suspect their motives, and I do not trust grand gestures. At some point, it struck me that perhaps he wasn't even gay but simply sought to find a way to end things gently. I would have preferred knowing that over believing I was deceived for so long. I searched for him online, and he was a representative of a queer organization in his college, so that notion was unlikely. It has been a considerable amount of time, but I am still angry. I am enraged that someone could write those words without sincerity. I am furious that individuals can pretend to care deeply while merely using another person. I also resent myself for being so naive. However, I am now married, my life is fulfilling, and I have no idea what he is doing. I wish for him to be single for eternity. The end. Story 2. I, 35M, was in an on and off relationship with 39F for 9 years. I, a 35-year-old male, was in an on and off relationship with her, a 39-year-old female, for 9 years, eventually becoming exclusive. It all began when she was attracted to me at a hospital while we were both visiting a mutual friend, although I barely noticed her. Fast forward about 5 years later, we met again through the same friend during New Year's. We conversed and connected well, but I couldn't make a move at that moment. Eventually, I inquired about her with our mutual friend, and to make a long story short, we started chatting, and things escalated quickly. About 9 months later, she chose to end things because she didn't want to be in a relationship. I agreed, and we parted ways amicably. A year later, we reconnected just for fun, and the intensity was the same. This time, she opened up about her past, sharing that she had experienced breakdowns requiring hospitalization multiple times. Essentially, she had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder before we met and was on medication for it. I provided her with significant support, to the point where she was able to reduce her medication. However, several years later, while reminiscing about the day she discussed her mental health, she remembered it differently than it had occurred. She felt that I was upset with her for hiding something substantial, but that was not how it unfolded. I was genuinely supportive, holding her hand and reassuring her that discussing it was perfectly fine. She broke up with me 4 times, each time indicating she felt constrained in some manner. The first breakup was mutual, the second was due to her belief that I couldn't handle her, the third happened because she wanted to socialize more, and the fourth was for the same reason. Approximately 5 years ago, we got back together, and this time was different. I became more involved in her life, spending almost every weekend at her place. We had a great time together, filled with love, care, and support for one another. During this period, she was also diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, and we recognized its effects on us, always finding a way to communicate and navigate through it. She became close to my family and was present during some of my toughest days, just as I was for her. However, every other week, she stayed at her parents' house for a few days, which negatively affected her mindset. She often complained about her parents, and eventually, her frustrations would be directed toward me, making me feel like there was something wrong with me. She used to express her feelings about her parents to me, even at the beginning of our relationship, and appreciated my support. Although we usually found ways to communicate, there was one time when I finally expressed how her projecting her feelings onto me bothered me. We argued for a bit, but it seemed she accepted how it affected me and started consciously holding back. About 2 years later, she suggested we take a break for me to explore more and experience things I had missed out on previously. During this break, I was also engaging in some inner child work, and she remained supportive. However, when I started socializing again, I met someone new. Upon discovering this, she sent me an email reflecting on her emotional struggles, acknowledging that she sometimes acts cold to avoid facing genuine feelings. While she believed our breakup was logically justified, she accepted that it didn't diminish our deep connection. Lost and critical of herself, she searched online for insights about love and relationships, leading her to concepts like soulmates and twin flames, which resonated with her feelings about me. Through this exploration, she gained clarity, realizing that our connection is unique and filled with communication, understanding, and comfort. While she recognized that I may have moved on, she still considered me her soulmate and realized how her reliance on her parents affected her ability to engage in adult relationships. Ultimately, she expressed lasting love and gratitude, acknowledging that our connection had made her feel complete. This realization led to us getting back together more intensely, with the intention of remaining exclusive. I felt genuinely in love, and she affirmed this by telling me I belonged to her and she to me. However, this time, our sex life had deteriorated, particularly on my part. I was gaining weight, experienced erectile issues, had difficulties in recovery, and couldn't perform many positions. She tried to encourage me to seek help and even suggested doing yoga together, but I responded negatively, making her feel unwanted. Subsequently, she became visibly upset about our sexual relationship, even going so far as to say I had an odor, which was untrue. We discussed how this was breeding resentment, and she expressed her desire to prevent that from happening. On the evening of October 17th, I had a difficult week at work and had barely slept. She had spent a long week at her parents' house, where doubts about our relationship arose, and she communicated those feelings with me. Despite everything, she attempted to cheer me up by dancing and encouraging me to join her, but I was unable to engage. At times when we had been upset with each other, she needed me to reach out, hold her, and reassure her. There was a previous instance where we broke up for 2 days because of a similar situation, and we only reconciled because she felt lonely and regretted lashing out at me. I have a tendency to shut down when faced with unpleasant situations or simply leave when conflict arises. This time, as we sat on the couch after her attempts to make me dance, something upset her, and she needed me to reach out and comfort her, but I failed to notice. She initiated sexual contact, and our physical encounter was unsatisfactory. I could see her disappointment while also recognizing her desire to complete the act. Afterward, as we cleaned up, she lay there upset, and we began to argue. She voiced her frustrations about expecting us to be intimate 4 to 5 times after being apart for a week, along with other issues concerning me. I raised my grievances as well, and when I asked if this was the end, she affirmed it, prompting me to leave. A week later, when we caught up, she was feeling better and was able to communicate clearly. She informed me that she had decided she no longer wanted to be in a relationship, did not find the idea of waking up next to someone appealing, and felt no need for a partner. She expressed gratitude for my influence in her life, stating that I helped her reach a point where she felt stronger about herself. I reminded her of the time we separated, when we both would offer to be each other's plus one again, but this time she said she would love to do that but wanted the freedom to choose. The next time we met was the first weekend of January this year when I went to collect my belongings from her house. During our conversation, She revealed that she met someone who is her age and part of her social circle, and that she had also hooked up with someone she had felt a connection with before we got together 4 years ago. This revelation shattered me, particularly because this individual was a music producer, DJ, and event organizer, someone I had seen perform early in their career, someone I aspired to be like. What hurt the most was that she had done all of this just about a month after our breakup. She appeared genuinely happy, indicating that her choice to avoid relationships had been beneficial for her well-being. I was left feeling heartbroken and sought answers online, which led me to this community, providing insight into how her borderline personality disorder may have impacted our relationship. I no longer know what to think. Did those 9 years mean nothing to her? Story 3. I, 22M, broke up with my GF, 23F, and begged her to stay. We are now on speaking terms, but it's not the same as before. How to fix? I, 22, male, ended my relationship with my girlfriend, 23, female, and pleaded with her to remain in my life. We are currently on speaking terms, but things are not the same as they once were. How can I restore what we had? To provide some context, we initially met online through her sister and started off as friends. After spending some time together, we admitted our feelings for each other and have been in a relationship since then. We are in a long-distance situation, and it takes me 1 or 2 hours to reach her, depending on traffic. Throughout our 2 years together, our relationship was primarily enjoyable, though we encountered obstacles occasionally which we attempted to resolve. However, a specific issue arose around mid-August or early September when she was struggling with personal issues and experiencing a mental breakdown due to the accumulation of her problems. During this period, she expressed a desire to end our relationship because she didn't want to impose her struggles on me. Despite this, I chose to support her. I understood the feeling of being lost in life and the temptation to self-sabotage. I was there for her in every way possible, and I reassured her that I would not leave under any circumstances. Following that episode, things changed for me. While I cannot claim that it did not leave a mark on me, I slowly began to heal over time. During the moments we shared, she made me feel incredibly loved. The challenge arose when we were apart. I expressed to her multiple times that I needed to be reminded of her love through spontaneous declarations of affection. Though this may seem trivial, it was essential for me to feel cherished. This became an ongoing issue until early 2025. Before judging her, it is important to note that she did everything within her power to convey her love. I truly felt her affection, but this particular expression made me feel most loved. She would occasionally send me updates about her day, share her perspective, and send pictures of herself or her meals, but it simply wasn't sufficient for me. One day, everything came to a head. She was away celebrating her first sale with colleagues and sent me numerous pictures, including ones of herself and her coworkers, updating me throughout the day. On that same day, I was overwhelmed with negative emotions, which led me to contemplate ending it all. I failed to respond to her messages, and when she asked if I was okay, I replied 2 hours later with, "You'll manage and be happier without me, goodbye." In that moment, my phone was in hand and the pills were ready for me to take, but I ultimately refrained. I cried myself to sleep that night and the following day, as the weight of my feelings was unbearable. I hoped that she would honor her promise to fight for us whenever I considered ending our relationship, whether abruptly or not. Ultimately, she did not. After a week of waiting, I reached out again, pleading for her to talk to me or return to me. She did not reply. A week later, she finally responded, stating, "I was hurt, deeply hurt." I was so joyful at that moment, as I was meant to be celebrating my breakthrough sale. But it wasn't just the sale that shattered me, it was also my feelings. On the way home from the event, I felt so sad. "I believe you were right. We are no longer good for each other. I hope you can stay resolute in your decision to break up with me because this is serious for me now." I never imagined this would happen because I thought we were okay. We had talked it out when you stayed that night. I'm sorry if you never felt just how much I love you. I've tried to love you to the best of my ability. I just want you to know that one of the bravest things I ever did was allow you to meet my parents. I had never done that before. I hoped it would demonstrate how deeply I care for you, to the extent that I broke my promise to them of not getting involved with anyone. I apologize if my actions did not express the love you desired. That is my fault. I am now beginning to rebuild my life, even without you by my side. The sense of betrayal I felt when she broke her promise dissipated after she sent that message. I genuinely began to feel the weight of the situation crashing down on me. I made every effort to communicate with her, explaining my actions and expressing my remorse. However, it was challenging to convey my feelings through text as I couldn't see her reaction or hear her voice as she read my messages. Gathering my courage, I went to her home and set aside my pride, begging her to stay. I did everything within my power to persuade her to remain in my life. I wrote her a letter, brought her gifts, and even got down on my knees. She meant everything to me, and I made a foolish mistake that I wished to rectify. Ultimately, she told me that we were still not okay, and she remained uncertain about our relationship. I resolved to give her time and do my utmost to make her feel loved in the coming days. On my way home, she reached out again, asking if I had arrived home after my hour-long journey. It had taken me 3 hours to get home. She reminded me to stay safe and was supportive. After that, we resumed speaking to each other, but the dynamic had changed. It felt as if we were casual friends with lingering feelings. I realized this resulted from my previous actions that had hurt her. One day, after concluding a call, I told her, "I've been feeling a bit down these past few days, so I've been calling more frequently. It's not just sadness, I miss you terribly too. But I didn't want to burden you while you were working, especially since you said we are still not okay. That's why I was staring into space during our call yesterday," she replied. "It's okay. I'll attempt to answer your calls more often, and I apologize for how things have been." "I was curious why you were staring into space yesterday," I responded. "I'm mostly afraid of being a burden to you when you should be concentrating on your work, which is why I didn't feel able to tell you yesterday." After a brief pause, she said, "I don't know anymore. I just want to focus too. The biggest distraction for me this month has been our breakup, and it remains with me." "I feel as if I don't want to commit anymore," I said. "I'm sorry. If you're still experiencing issues, please feel free to share them with me." She was unable to articulate her feelings, stating that she felt happier alone and that she stood by my earlier statement. I understood that my prior assertion had merit. She found a new place to call home, and her coworkers were bringing her joy, similar to our time together. I conveyed this to her, and she acknowledged that I was correct in everything I said. I made an effort to persuade her that I am sometimes wrong. For example, when I visited her again after that incident, I expected some hostility, but there was none. I could see in her eyes that over time, she wanted to try again, but she was still wounded by my actions. I assured her that I would do everything possible to transform our relationship into a safe space where she would no longer fear being hurt and that I deserved a second chance. She said she would attempt to work on it. I asked what I could do for her, but she admitted that she didn't know. Following this exchange, our interactions remained the same. If I reached out, she would respond and send the occasional picture. That was all. I am now at a loss regarding what to do. I want to restore our previous connection, but I am unsure how to help her overcome the pain I caused. With Valentine's Day or our monthly anniversary approaching, I have arranged a date for us. Would it be appropriate for me to broach the topic of our relationship afterward? Is there a path for us to strengthen our bond? I welcome any insights or advice from the community. Story 4. Foolish me. I wrote this to give myself closure from my ex 27M, 25F. The year is 2025. We are at the beginning of February. It is 4 a.m. as I sit on my bed writing this. I am composing one of my most significant pieces. Kylie and I officially dated for 2.5 years. Our relationship was troubled. Things deteriorated to the point where I decided to end it and broke up with her. Around the middle of 2021, Kylie and I became single. She was distressed and wanted us to be in a relationship again, but I declined. Nevertheless, she continued to live with me, and we would engage in activities typical of couples. She would occasionally leave to spend time in her hometown and would return to be with me. The reason I wouldn't re-enter a relationship with her is that I was exhausted by the cheating and deception. We were a toxic couple that endured every negative situation imaginable together. Frequently, the painful experiences would bring me to tears. I recognized the sadness I caused her and concluded that we could not continue like this, leading me to end our relationship. Opting to continue living together, even without being in a relationship, turned out to be just as chaotic as before. the painful experiences did not cease. We continued to hurt one another and drifted further apart. Eventually, she moved out and returned to her hometown. However, after a while, we reconnected, and she began packing clothes to stay with me for extended periods. If there is one thing we never lost, it was the sexual intimacy we shared. We continued to sleep together and participate in activities like going out to eat. I would hold her at night as if we were reliving the peak of our relationship. However, clearly, we were not a couple. Our cell phones became filled with messages from other people, and I began creating more and more memories with the individuals I encountered. I experienced various flings and emotional connections with different women, while Kylie remained over. There was a moment when she came to my home with hickeys on her neck. As one might imagine, these confusing dynamics we established proved to be catastrophic. One girl I was speaking to ended up sending Kylie messages and pictures of us together out of jealousy. In response, Kylie sent me a picture of herself in bed with another man. This only further distanced Kylie and me and left me feeling utterly shattered inside. One of the breaking points for Kylie was when she was living with me and returned home from work. She couldn't enter the locked house and asked me where I was. I was at a party, intoxicated and being intimate with another woman. Later that day, Kylie went through my phone while I was asleep and discovered everything and more. This incident, along with the earlier picture situation, pushed Kylie further away from me than ever before. Fast forward to the present day, where just 6 days ago, Kylie completed a 4-day stay with me. Currently, the maximum number of consecutive days we spend together is 5 or fewer. She typically arrives on a Friday and stays until Tuesday when I return to work. We have another visit arranged for the upcoming week. The issue is that Kylie has not spoken a word to me for 5 days now. Admittedly, our last visit did not go well as there were disagreements and angry arguments leading up to her actually coming over. When she was present, I was ill from a hangover, and she was on her period. We did not have intercourse until the final night she was at my home. Even then, the experience lacked any magic. I write this in an attempt to find closure. It has hurt my feelings knowing she has not said anything to me for 5 days. I could be in the hospital, critically ill, or in some kind of accident, and she wouldn't care to know. One question I keep coming back to, though I already know the answer, is, does she love me? I would not assert that Kylie loves me. In fact, at this moment, with her being distant and silent, I would not even say she likes me. I feel as though we have passed the point of her loving me. These days, all my efforts seem to be solely aimed at ensuring she somewhat still likes me. This reality creates cracks in the already wounded state of my heart. I still love her. She occupies my thoughts constantly. Though I have met other women and shared some intimate moments with them, I remain fixated on Kylie. Communicating with her is effortless. We joke and hold one another like I have never done with anyone else. She infiltrates my daily thoughts, and I simply cannot shake her from my mind. What truly pains me is the knowledge that this is a one-sided relationship. The Lord above knows I still love this woman, and I am certain He understands that she does not reciprocate my feelings. I feel a lump in my throat just writing that. If I know the answers to these questions, why do I sit here suffering as though I do not? Tonight, I am in my room writing hundreds of words about my ex, trying to comprehend everything, while she is supposedly out there being happy without me. She is likely intoxicated right now with her friends or in the arms of another man. I am probably the last thing on her mind. She truly affects me. I can feel the tears in my eyes waiting to fall as I conclude this piece. I adore someone who seems indifferent to my feelings, who wouldn't even care. I feel abandoned by her, and I also feel hopeless, believing that some other woman will come along and love me the way I need to be loved. Generally, many of the women out there appear to be playing games and merely testing the waters with the men they interact with. I have my shirt off, lying in bed in basketball shorts, inhaling the scent of a room in need of cleaning. There is a grim, sad, and frankly unappealing appearance to my eyes and face at this moment. I need to do laundry, get a haircut, clean my car, and pull myself together. It feels as though I am in the gray world from the movie Halloween Town, and yet I somehow find contentment in it. Kylie, wherever you are, I wish you happiness. Clearly, you are checking off your boxes and feel no need to communicate with me. In your view, you probably do not require me at all. For what it is worth, my heart remains with you, as it always does. You have me all mixed up in my emotions while you are somewhere feeling cheerful. To the world and to myself, I am just a fool who did not recognize the signs. The signs to stop being so emotionally invested in an ex who has moved on. Foolish me.